There are four cell types that exist in the epidermis. The most numerous is called a keratinocyte. You can see the keratinocytes here. They're shaded orange, and they are outnumbering all of the other cell types. The keratinocyte originates at the very bottom of the epidermis. You can see that the keratinocytes are much rounder at the bottom. And then as they age, they start to produce a protein called keratin. Keratin is being represented in this picture by those little dots inside of the keratinocytes. Keratin is a fibrous protein. Okay, it's a linear protein, and it accumulates inside of the keratinocytes. And so you can see eventually what happens is as these cells fill with that protein, keratin, the cells also start to take on that flattened, elongated shape. Eventually, the cells become completely filled with keratin and it kills the cell. And those dead cells, dead scale-like cells filled with keratin, are the ones that get pushed up to the surface of the epidermis and eventually shed from the epidermis. But the keratinocyte is what makes the epidermis kind of like a water-resistant overcoat. Another cell type that lives in the epidermis is a dendritic cell, or a Langerhans cell, and those cells are derived from white blood cells. And so they have a completely different origin. And with that in mind, the dendritic cells function like a white blood cell. They can actually move through the lower regions of the epidermis in between the keratinocytes, and they're able to phagocytize any type of foreign invader. A third type of cell that lives in the epidermis is known as a tactile epithelial cell, or a Merkel cell. And those cells live at the very bottom of the epidermis, and they're associated with free nerve endings. And so you can almost think of it as a type of touch receptor. Another cell type that lives in the epidermis is a melanocyte. Melanocytes exist deep in the epidermis. You can see it shaded gray in this picture, and you can see how the melanocyte has processes that are branching in between the keratinocytes. Here's another diagram of a melanocyte where we can more clearly see how the processes of the melanocyte are branching out in between the keratinocytes that are shaded pink here. The melanocyte produces a pigment called melanin. Melanin is a brown-black pigment, and that pigment is injected into the keratinocytes. It's transferred into the keratinocytes. Take a look at the end of this process from the melanocyte. Do you see how the melanin is accumulating in a membranous vesicle? That membranous vesicle is called a melanosome. The melanosome can enter into a keratinocyte where the melanin is released, and then typically the melanin will hover around the nucleus of that cell, and it gives the cell its color, and it also protects that nucleus from damage from UV radiation.